Hello, and welcome to EPR with your favorite environmental nerds, Nic and Laura. On today's episode, Nic and I discuss the differences between working at small and large businesses. We talked to Jennifer Walker about owning a small business, working across the country in veganism. And finally, if you lined all the planets up end to end, they would fit between the Earth and the Moon with room to spare. Pretty cool.
Yeah. How about that?
Hit that music.
All right. Before we get to our segment today, Senior Leadership for NAEP is hosting their next happy hour on Wednesday, February 9th at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, or Pacific, as most people say it. It's always a good time with really... Dang it. It's always a good time with really engaging conversations. So please be sure to check it out at www.naep.org. All right. We appreciate all of our awesome sponsors. They are what keeps this show going. Laura and I love doing it. And if you'd like to sponsor the show, please head on over to www.environmentalprofessionalsradio.com and check out our sponsor form for details. Let's get to our segment. So we had Jennifer on. She mentioned, talking about large versus small business, and that's something that you and I want to talk about today. So I want you to start us off.
Yeah. So, I was working with another company who was talking about we were talking about their strengths and weaknesses, and they were mentioning how they have a hard time getting the employees to be beyond the, that's not my job mentality. And we're a small company, so you have to do a lot of things. And I was like, well, for the right people, that's really great. Like you need to, you can approach that as a strength and not a weakness, or turn that weakness into a strength, or however you want it to be, by really just saying, acknowledging this is how it is and what's good about it, And I think too, for the career seeker side, you also need to do that. You need to know that when you go work for a big company, if you're not the kind of person who likes to do the same thing day after day, you might get into that because you might just be doing road work, or you might just be doing field work, or, and then, I got bored of doing repeated field routines. Being in the field was awesome, but doing the same truck run, the same thing, it was, after a year and a half, it's really repetitive, But when you work for a smaller company, you might get to do field work and travel here. You might get to do something different, but you also have to show up without that's not my job mentality, right?
Right. Yeah. 100%. I've worked for big and small companies in my career. And, I think there's some nuance to it. If you're in a big company, there are jobs that do those things, that do different things. When you work in marketing, it's kind of repetitive in some ways, but you're also always hunting for something new. And so there's a way for you to do it, but it's not the same as being in a small company, because you're not just doing one thing new. You're doing lots of different things that's far beyond what you may have thought you were comfortable with, but it also exposes you to a lot of different things. And if you're not even sure what you want to do, it's a great avenue to be like, hey, let me go work at a small company where I'm going to be a jack of all trades and find a way to kind of help guide where I want to go, And it would be harder. It is harder at a larger company. Sometimes when you work in a business unit at a larger company, that's your unit. That's it.
Yeah.
You want to work outside of that. And, every large companies are all a little different, but some of them are very regionally focused. Like you will work in the South, you will work in the Northwest, and that's it. You don't get to do other things outside of that. So which is really strange when you have conferences that are very national, right? And you're going to these big national conferences. And you're like, oh, well, I work in the Northeast, so there's no point in me talking to anybody from Florida. Right. It really is odd to me because the opportunities kind of need to be organic, and you can't force relationships and, oh, I'm in the Northeast. And so, yes, there's more people you can meet there and there's more ways for you to get connected. But shutting off one of those, for me personally, shutting off a relationship in an area was tough for me. I'm like, I want to know people. I want to get to work with people I like. I want that aspect of it more than I want where.
Yeah.
It's very important to me. And I know that. So that's what I went after.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I think that's not my job mentality. Also, in the small company, you might find that you have to do some social media on top of environmental work, or you might have to even do some filing or photocopies. But at the same time, you might need to learn a new software, but you're also just being a team player. And on the flip side, you might get to go work on a project that is on the other side of the country, or just something new and different. So I think you got to look at the bigger picture of maybe today I have to do some office work that I'm not really thrilled about, but I'm part of a bigger team and some cooler projects that I'll get to have on my resume. And, and if you decide that you've done 10 different things and you really love doing wetlands work, then your next career jump can be specifically into wetlands,
Yeah. And there's all kind of avenues for you to take. And, like that, I guess one of the bigger differences, there's, I don't want to say there's no benefit to big business, because there is. There's, resources in particular. You have far more of those at a big business.
Exactly. You're probably not going to have to do marketing or filing if you're in a big company and they have people doing that,
Yeah. And you can have it's easier for you to go to conferences. It's easier for you to network because the companies will pay for that. And some ways you have to kind of take that on your own with smaller companies, especially very small companies. But it is different, so you just have to kind of keep your eyes open. And don't be afraid of one or the other too. Try it.
You also get, this company I was working with, you are at any time 0 or 1 steps away from the owners, and that's a huge benefit.
That's huge.
Having access to someone who's been doing the work for 20 years, who you can just walk up to. In a larger company, you may not ever see those people, or have to make an appointment 6 months out to get that, so, there's just different things to look at and different benefits from it, but it's not a weakness to say that I'm a small company and we have to do a lot of things.
Yeah. And, big business, a lot of times you have more experts. You can learn a lot more of the, leaders in the industry. You may have more than one, but your relationships, I think, are more important than really which company you're working for. If you have a great relationship at a small company, and that great relationship could be actually the owner of the company, that's fantastic. That is absolutely great. But you can have it in large business too. It's just different.
Yeah. And I know Carrie Kelly at Flatwoods Consulting in Florida, she started with them when they were 5 people, and now she's been with them for their entire lifespan, and she's just under the owners. And there's also a lot of opportunity to grow with the company when you start with a small company as well. Yeah,
that's true. And there's a sense of ownership and pride in where it goes,
Yes.
And it's a big challenge. It is not easy. We've had people on the show that run their own companies. We have a lot of those, actually. And those are all success stories in one degree or another. But there's also some where that doesn't work out. There's more risk there. But it's a really good challenge for some people. And you just have to know a little about yourself to see if that's what you want.
Yep, absolutely. And, and for anyone who is a business owner struggling with that whole, that's not my job thing, that's an expectation you have to start from the beginning. So again, recognize that is how it is. It's factual, and that this is how we operate, and set those expectations even from your job description. You will be doing a lot of things. So then when that comes up, you can say, when you got hired, you knew this, it's
yes.
And it may not even come up because it was part of the hiring process,
Mm-hmm. But I think it's a great point, right? Make that part of the hiring process. And again, I think there's always a connotation to it. It's like, oh, well, you have to do it doesn't have to be bad. Some people like doing that. Some people like doing the same thing every day. Some people like repetition. You want to find people that are happy doing that. You don't want somebody who isn't, because then they're going to leave, or they're not going to do their job as well. It's just, you want people to match up. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no point in pretending it's not that way, because like you just said, you're not going to get the right fit with the right people.
Yeah. And if somebody who's miserable, they're just not going to do as good a job. It's just the truth.
Yeah. So, Jennifer has a lot to offer and talk more about her small business. And I don't know if you can hear the birds here, but I'm enjoying Hawaii, and we'll talk about that more on our next episode.
Yeah, there you go. Gotta love a good tease. Let's get to it.
Welcome back to EPR. Today we have Jennifer Walker, President and CEO of Watearth, on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Oh, thank you, Laura. My pleasure. And thank you to you and Nick for hosting this show.
Yeah, Nick sends his regards. He was traveling today and so not able to make it on the show, but he did insert some questions in here for you. So let's just start off. You have an amazing career, and the work that you do is really awesome. And I love that you own your own company here. So let's just talk about how you first got interested in becoming an environmental professional.
Excellent question. I think it probably started back with water resources when I was about 11. My parents' basement flooded repeatedly when it rained, and I was the one tasked with sweeping the water into the drain. And I got tired of doing it. So I thought, let's figure this out, and realized that the whole backyard drained into the window well. Oh, wow. Which basically then just flooded into the basement. So not quite environmental, but I did dig a little swell and reroute the water out to the front yard, curb and gutter. So that's the water resources part. The environmental, I've always been passionate about working in the environmental field. And when I was moving into college, my mother happened to be going back to school at the same time, and her physics instructor suggested that I consider civil engineering because it would let me work in both worlds, engineering and environmental. And I said, sure, that sounds fine. I knew nothing about it. And it turns out to have been an excellent, excellent fit. So I've always really, I think, worked or had a foot in both the environmental and the water resources / civil field.
That's awesome. So it sounds like, yeah, your civil engineering started at 11 and built from there. That's really cool. And then, it sounds like you're a natural problem solver.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that really ties together for me, my environmental work and engineering work, is having gone through permaculture training, which is a system of sustainable design. It's usually geared towards the non-technical professional, but I think a lot of landscape architects and environmental professionals are drawn towards it. And that's really helped me integrate both the environmental work that I did early in my career, which included wetlands delineation, which is fun, not so fun in the hot, humid Houston summers, wielding the machetes, but phase 1 ESAs, NAEP type work and so forth. And so I've been able to carry that work into Watearth, into the environmental and water resources and civil work that we do, but also integrate the permaculture and a lot of the hands-on experience that I have in that world.
Yeah, it's very cool. We'll talk a little bit about your company here in a minute, but looking back on your career path, what advice do you have for students or people who are just looking to start their careers in water resources, and like what kind of degrees should they be looking at or certifications?
It's going to depend a bit on the person of whether they might want to go, more the engineering route or the environmental route or related degree, like even geography, which, a lot of our GIS professionals that work in the environmental field started out in geography and are able to do some really amazing mapping and database analysis. So I think building on the person's particular interest, how much do you want to work a little bit more, I think, with the numbers and the math, maybe more the engineering route versus there tend to be more field opportunities on the purely environmental side. But myself and, we have other staff who work in both worlds. So there's opportunities either way, but it's going to depend on playing to the individual's strengths. And I would say the college degree in the field is a start, but it also opens up the door to, I think, make of it what the individual wants to and tailor a career in a direction, that's really of interest to them.
Yeah, that's great advice. So on the entrepreneur side, what led you to starting your own business?
That's a great question, Laura. At the time, I was working purely in hydrology and hydraulics and flood control, which is a great field. I really love it and am passionate about it, but it just didn't have the breadth that I was looking for, wanting to tie back to some of my earlier environmental work and also a lot of the sustainability and resiliency that I was doing outside of work. I really wanted to bring that into our practice. I looked at positions that were out there. There wasn't really anything at the time that was a good fit in terms of where I was in my career and wanting such an integrated approach. And that's what led me to start Watearth. Not necessarily at the best of times in 2008, 2009, the Great Recession, which is a whole different topic, but here we are.
Yeah. So that was many moons ago now. 14 years you've had this company. But specifically during that time frame, like, how did you have the courage? Did you have mentors or someone that inspired you, or did you just take the leap?
A little bit of everything. There have been various mentors along the way. I've gotten support from, different small business organizations like SCORE, but, also even now as a diverse supplier, there's a lot of great programs out there, some sponsored by agencies and organizations. And, for example, I received a scholarship from Wells Fargo to attend a program at Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. Oh, nice. Similarly, PG&E sponsored myself to attend training at UCLA's Anderson School of Business. So that's all very helpful. I think it takes a lot of resiliency and persistence and not giving up when things are difficult. It's not the easiest career path, but it's been the right career path for myself.
That's awesome. And now it's allowed you to open some career paths for other people. And how many employees do you have?
We're right about low 20s at this point.
Wow, that's pretty big.
So we're continuing. We're continuing to add staff and grow, but we like to think of ourselves as Watearth being kind of a big BBE in the sense of we bring a lot to the table in terms of teaming with other partners.
Yeah, that's great. What kind of projects are you working on?
We have a really nice range of projects. So, as I mentioned, we're doing a lot of work in Southern California for Los Angeles County Department of Public Works, and that ranges from stormwater capture projects to improve water quality within the watershed and region. And those projects have everything from, environmental planning and permitting. They touch the CEQA process, which is the California equivalent of NEPA, as well as civil design. We also have some watershed studies that we're doing with LA County Department of Public Works. City of Los Angeles, we've done a lot of really great water resources, water quality, hydrology, technical studies to support the CEQA process. Probably the two coolest ones were the LA Zoo Vision or Master Plan, EIR, which was a lot of fun. I got a super cool behind the scenes tour of all of the exhibits. And then also citywide support on hydrology and water quality for the LA Sidewalk EIR, which is a big program to improve accessibility for the region. And then City of Austin Watershed Department is doing some really progressive, sustainable, and resilient items with their streams. We're doing a lot of work on stream restoration, green infrastructure. Those projects, they include our roles run the gamut from the environmental side, riparian assessments, touching, biology and other aspects into more of the modeling and engineering design. And then City of Houston, some good work on a sidewalks program. This is a little bit more in the urban planning realm, but it's really multidisciplinary, looking at improving sidewalks in specific neighborhoods. It addresses equity issues, which is a real passion of mine, both in terms of more trees in neighborhoods that have not had that kind of equitable distribution of infrastructure, but also looking at maintenance issues and infrastructure as basic as sidewalks. Is there a safe path to get from a person's home to a convenience store or wherever it is that they're trying to go? So that's a really exciting, I think, groundbreaking project for the region. And then I'll touch on your neck of the woods with New Jersey American Water. We have a really interesting water conservation demonstration project. We're in final design, basically showcasing the use of native, indigenous, more low water use plants and how consumers or their client base can help save water and improve the resiliency of the water system by making different selections. Yeah. So that's great. There's some environmental role on that in terms of permitting and stormwater erosion, as well as civil design. So many of our projects are really multidisciplinary and very integrated. And even when we're supporting, for example, providing environmental services on a project, it often touches the engineering work that we do.
That's really cool. That is a wide range of projects and also all over the country. So how does a small company accomplish that? Do you go after the projects and then put people in place, or do you go after projects where you have people? How do you make that work?
It's primarily the projects first. We have been fortunate to add some great new hires during COVID with folks working remotely that are in new geographies, but our markets, City of Austin, City of Houston area, Los Angeles, the San Francisco Bay Area, those are big markets for us where we do a lot of work. And so we really like to provide good service, good quality deliverables, working with the agencies or with our teaming partners. We do a fair amount of sub-consulting work, and so continue to grow in that way. Our newer markets, as we get a project in a new area, we do try to build on that. Now, historically, I did quite a bit of work in Anchorage right after I started Watearth. Yeah, a little difficult to get to in terms of marketing and everything else. So we're not as active up there anymore, but overall, trying to build on successes in areas.
That's cool. Have you connected with Shannon Olkers? She was on our program and owns her company in Anchorage. Maybe you guys could partner up on some things.
That sounds great. I have not, but thank you.
Yeah, I should check out her episode. Okay, one more thing on the small business kind of topic, because I was just talking to another company about this the other day, a company that was thinking about in their hiring how being a small business and trying to get their employees to understand that they're going to have to work on a lot of different types of projects. What they had seen it as kind of a weakness, but I really feel like that, for the right person, that's really a strength to be able to not have to do a stormwater project over and over and over, but to do something in a different location or a different type of project. I would imagine that your employees get that opportunity to work on a lot of different kinds of things.
Yeah, that's an excellent observation, Laura. I think some folks may prefer to be very focused on certain things, and that's going to be a better fit, most likely at a larger company that's a little bit more segmented. I've worked very hard on our org structure to not get into silos. I mean, we've all had the experience with the big box retailers of, you tell 5 different people the same thing, and nobody communicates. And we're far from that, but I'm really working hard that not ever apply. So I think for the right people, the working with a small firm that does a lot of different types of work. We are water resources, environmental and civil, and it's pretty broad for our size, but it's also very focused. There are certain things we clearly don't do. We don't design bridges. There are other items that we just don't do. We would have teaming partners who could handle those. But we have great staff. Our operations managers, our technical staff are excellent. And part of the reason they're an excellent fit, besides technical skills and meshing with our core values, is that interest in working on a diverse type of projects, whether it be, like you said, geographically, or we may have an engineer who gets to step in and do more environmental work in the field or wherever, and vice versa. And I think that's really helpful, both for engagement and also for skill set. But it's also extremely important in a small business because we're not of the size where everybody can just wear one hat.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's great. So people listening, if you're looking for a job, that's something to consider, is whether you'd like to be an expert in one specific thing or if you want to learn a lot of different things. And the size company that you're applying to could make a big difference. Let's switch gears a little bit. I think you told us a lot about some travel that you do, and Nic and I both love travel. And obviously that's why he's not here today, out doing some fun travel. What's the most recent place you've been to? Have you been able to travel in COVID?
My travel has been extremely limited with COVID. I think besides Austin, Houston, being in Texas, and then also being in California, the most recent place I've been to was New York City and Hudson Valley area, which was partly for work, partly to go there for a wedding, and partly for fun. So I slid in right before things closed back down again, which was great.
Yeah. Another perk of owning your own business and deciding where your projects are, right?
Right.
So when you travel, I saw that you like to try out vegan restaurants. Are you vegan?
I do love to try out vegan restaurants, and I am vegan. I have been for, I won't say how long, but more than a couple of decades. So
that's
quite
awesome.
some time.
Very cool. So what are some of your favorites? I love to check out vegan restaurants too. I just had the Beyond Chicken the day it came out. KFC, I should say.
Yeah, there's some great new products out there now for sure. When I was in New York City, I really loved TS Kitchen. It was very close to our hotel and just really kind of casual, but excellent food. It was great. Would love to go back there. I think most recently in New Orleans, there's a all vegan restaurant called Seed, which is just outside the Warehouse District, but also the famous Gumbo Shop. And no, I'm not putting in a plug for them, but they have some excellent vegan options there. So, I mean, cool. New Orleans is such a great food city for sure. Probably my long-time favorite for several decades is the Millennium Restaurant. It used to be out of San Francisco, is now in the East Bay in Oakland. And I think as long as we're talking more high-end restaurants, Crossroads in Los Angeles and Sublime in Fort Lauderdale area. So now I'm getting hungry. It's about lunchtime.
We'll have to talk more about this later because I have my own list going and I've got my places I need to visit.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many more. I just can't list them all, but I really like the Happy Cow app and tend to look at that. And depending on who's traveling with me, if it's myself, that's great. I pick for myself. If there's others with me, I'll look at, either all vegan or good options so that we're all happy.
Yeah, it is nice to see that that's just becoming more normal and common on a regular menu.
Yes, it is.
And then along with the travel, you've had some really cool experiences. And I grew up in Florida, so I'm very familiar with kayaking with alligators. I've actually wakeboarded in the Hillsborough River where you could see alligators. So I know what that's like. And if people are like, oh my God, that's crazy, but you've kayaked with crocodiles? That to me is a whole nother level of crazy.
To be clear, when I was in Nepal, I think there were some risky things that happened, but I didn't realize they were risky until after the fact. So I guess there's no risk management there. But yeah, we had a kayak trip in the Chitwan National Park with crocodiles in there. And, someone asked, well, so are you carrying a gun or anything? And they're like, oh no, we just won't capsize. So it was a great experience. Yeah. And, of course, there were the crocodiles and gorgeous other birds and wildlife that we got to see. We did see, the use of the river as more of like waste and other things, but then people taking drinking water right there. So it was really mixed because I saw the state of the infrastructure and, how things were being done juxtaposed with the natural beauty. I mean, also outside of the national park in Kathmandu, some of the devastation from earthquakes that were somewhat recent at that time and just the crumbling infrastructure. So it was a great eye-opening experience. And I did see a lot of natural beauty, a lot of wildlife, elephants within sanctuaries, but also just taking a hike. And there was an elephant like right there across the river and, Jeep safari with rhinos. And it was a very cool experience.
Sounds like it. Do you have plans to go back or anywhere like that?
No particular plans for Nepal. It's a really, really long trip and kind of hard to get there, but definitely have been pining to go back to South and Central America or Mexico and have just kind of stayed within the U.S. with COVID. So looking forward to that changing.
Yeah, for sure. All right. We love to talk policy on the show. When I say we, I mean Nick. And so we're going to ask a question for Nick here. You're working on a project in City of Houston sidewalks. I think you mentioned it before. And I guess he would like to know that it has a potential to shape policy in a big way in the city, and was wondering what sticks out about that project to you.
What sticks out to me about the sidewalks project with the City of Houston is, there's always been an emphasis on flood control and flooding. And so over the past couple of decades, and definitely since starting Watearth, I've been involved with regional flood control studies for the city, looking at regional detention, opportunities for low impact development, multi-use facilities, incorporating wetlands into the basins, that type of infrastructure. And then, also focused more on, neighborhoods and residential areas, looking at solving flooding issues, whether it's structural flooding or just like street and yard flooding. So that's been ongoing and that's been a priority. I think what's new and interesting about the sidewalks is it's really a focus on, as I mentioned, it's starting in a couple of neighborhoods that, have not, I think, always had equitable access to trees and maintenance and other infrastructure. So that's exciting to see it approached from an equity standpoint, but then also to know that it is potentially going to set policy for the city and for other neighborhoods. And so we're looking at how do you make the sidewalks connected. And it's not just a matter of you put in sidewalks. Well, there's other infrastructure associated with it. And then that additional impervious cover for a typical concrete sidewalk will require mitigation, at least from a stormwater perspective. So looking at, green infrastructure, trees, ability to help with the urban heat island effect. There's just so many different aspects to it that are really exciting and I think will be good for policy moving forward.
That's great. It sounds like a really great project that other people can model after. I like that.
Absolutely.
We're getting close to the end of our time here. So do you have any other field stories or hobbies that you want to talk about?
In terms of hobbies, I think probably my main hobby besides checking out vegan restaurants is just landscape photographs on the fly. And what I mean is, what can I get with my iPhone that doesn't require fancy equipment? So, I've been taking field photos for my entire career, which spans almost 3 decades. And then with Watearth, one of the things that I've made a point to do is visit a lot of different stormwater and natural features, especially green infrastructure, and get photos. So I love landscape photos. I love sunrise, sunset photos. That's really a hobby and passion of mine. But I also don't position and try to wait and do all of that. It's more what can I get in real time and just try to make it look as good as possible.
Awesome. Do you share those anywhere or you just have your own personal collection?
I share them periodically. We just posted one on LinkedIn, actually, that I was able to pick up after a project visit for a design build project. So it just kind of depends on the photo and the inspiration.
Okay, cool. Well, now that we're connected, I can keep an eye out for those.
That sounds great. And I think in terms of field stories, I have an interesting Nepal story, if you'd like to hear it.
Yes, I love, travel all day.
Yeah. So my mom actually went on that trip with me. It was a group trip, and the story involves a jeweler. Obviously, we didn't get the alexandrite she thought she was buying. It was sapphire-like alexandrite, come to find out back in the U.S. But still a great story and a good bargain. But the jeweler invited us home for tea, which we did decline, but we did follow the jeweler into an abandoned, dilapidated courtyard. Actually, my mother went first, and I thought, maybe this isn't so safe. I should hang back and make sure everything's okay. It all turned out fine, but I'll end it with working with the jeweler and the Buddhist painters to purchase some of the mandala type paintings. So we were discussing price, and it kept changing, and the change kept changing. And finally I said, look, I'm an engineer. You're not going to get me on math. So let's just settle on this and I'll pay what we agreed upon. So, but turned out quite safe.
That's good. Yeah. I've had a couple of those moments where you're like, is this a trick?
Yeah. Did we really do this? Yeah. How do we back out without letting them know that we're backing out?
Right. Or even just how do you make a totally innocent person who you're just like, I don't know, not feel bad, That's great.
Yeah.
Joys
exactly. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate
out there.
That's right. So I really appreciate the opportunity to chat, and also NAEP for hosting the show with yourself and Nick.
Yeah, thanks for coming on and sharing all this information. I think the work you're doing is fantastic, and the opportunities your employees are getting just sounds really cool. Where can people connect with you if they are so inclined?
Yeah, I would love to connect. They're welcome to connect on LinkedIn. If you look for Jennifer J. Walker, I should pop up, or you can also type in Watearth. My email is jwalker, first initial, last name, @watearth.com.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for being with us today, and I'll hope to talk to you again soon.
Wonderful. Thank you, Laura.
That's our show. Thank you, Jennifer, for joining us today. And please be sure to check us out each and every Friday. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Bye.